Ted Cruz decided to weigh in on the net neutrality debate, and since he is an internet porn aficionado, you would think that he'd come out on the side of net neutrality, but of course he also is a Republican Party hack, and he of course came out against net neutrality. So he teamed up with the necklace Nimrod on the FCC, Mike O'Reilly, and they both penned an op-ed in Roll Call where they unequivocally came out in favor of the FCC's decision to repeal Title II net neutrality regulations. So the piece is titled "Stop the Next Internet Power Grab," and no, he's not insinuating that the FCC should prevent large internet service providers like Comcast and Verizon from taking control of the internet by acting as gatekeepers to everything we access online. His argument, instead, is that the government shouldn't be able to take over the internet by preventing these companies from taking over the internet. So logically, his argument makes no sense, but this is Ted Cruz, so he's not known to make a lot of sense. But his argument in this particular piece relates to why he doesn't believe states and local governments should be allowed to pass their own net neutrality laws. And in this piece, he actually encourages the FCC to block states from putting into place their own net neutrality laws. Now, this complicates the issue for Ted Cruz even more because basically he's been relatively consistent as a Republican who has argued in favor of states' rights and federalism. In fact, this is how he defined federalism recently.
How do you define practical federalism?
Well, it is the genius of the Constitution. It is the genius of the 10th Amendment that the states serve, as Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis put it, as laboratories of democracy. That the Constitution just defines the powers of Congress. In Article 1, Section 8, they are few and enumerated, and everything that is not in there is left to the states to decide.
So you just saw him argue in favor of states' rights and in favor of states having the autonomy to do what they please. But now in this opinion piece, we're going to see him argue the opposite. So he states the internet has changed how we communicate, engage in commerce, and live our lives. It not only provides a platform that can be used to promote free speech, but serves as a great equalizer when it comes to jobs and opportunity by dramatically reducing the barriers of entry for anyone with a new idea and broadband connection. The Obama-era regulations give federal bureaucrats new authority to regulate pricing and terms of service and eventually even collect billions in new taxes. This policy not only threatens investment across the United States, but seeks to force companies of all sizes to ask the government for prior approval of business decisions. The end result is less broadband, less innovation, and less freedom for the American consumer. Thankfully, relief will soon be on the way as the Federal Communications Commission under Chairman Ajit Pai seeks to repeal the so-called Open Internet Order and return the internet to its original classification as an information service, which allowed the internet to flourish. But the restoration of internet freedom may be short-lived, as there are already scores of politicians and state and local regulators who have indicated an interest in replicating the Obama administration's fatally flawed rules at the state and local level. Allowing the Obama administration's dangerous policy to infest the internet through state and local government mandates serves no purpose other than to stifle America's entrepreneurial spirit, frustrate innovation, and block economic opportunity. For these reasons, it is imperative that the FCC establish a strong deregulatory federal framework for broadband regulations and preempt state and local regulations from having the opportunity to implement the next internet power grab. Except he supports the next big internet power grab. He supports these large internet service providers like Comcast, AT&T, and Verizon to be able to act as gatekeepers to the content that we see on the internet, which, if you care about freedom on the internet, you should be against this. But Ted Cruz, like Ajit Pai and other FCC commissioners, are masters in doublespeak, and he's saying one thing that sounds good to all of us, but when you actually look at the policy he's supporting, well, it does the opposite of what he's insisting. So let's get to some of the specifics. He states that the Obama-era regulations give bureaucrats new authority to regulate pricing and terms of service. That's not true. And what he's talking about here in saying that they have the authority to regulate pricing in terms of service means that they are telling internet service providers that they're not allowed to impose fees on websites that they don't like. He also states that this policy threatens investment, which again is not true. Comcast increased investment by 10% in broadband infrastructure, and overall investment, when you look at the aggregate industry, is up by 5%. 9% if you exclude companies that already finished building their new broadband networks. So he's just outright lying here. Now, additionally, he says that the result of these Obama-era regulations is less freedom for the American consumer. But we can easily test out this theory in order to quickly determine that it's bullshit. Try going to any website you could think of. Try it. I've said this multiple times on the show. Try going to any website. If you're still able to access any website you want, and all websites at the same speed, then guess what? We still have freedom on the internet. They're the ones who are against freedom. They're the ones who want to change that and take freedom away from consumers by giving power to these large internet service providers. So clearly, in making these arguments, Ted Cruz has no clue what net neutrality is or what it means. But unfortunately for him, as a lover of internet porn, he's going to learn the hard way. But since I'm nice, I'll go ahead and educate Ted Cruz.
Excellent.
Alright, Ted, so imagine that you're trying to access pornographic content that you frequently enjoy on Pornhub, for example. But all of a sudden, when you are browsing this website, you get this message that pops up and tells you that Pornhub actually isn't included in your internet plan, and if you want to see the video that you tried to click on, you're going to have to upgrade your internet plan in order to pay for the porn package, for example. This is the exact type of scenario that could come to fruition if net neutrality is repealed. Now, I'm pretty sure that Ted Cruz knows this. The problem is that he's just a disingenuous liar. But as someone who loves porn, he is willing to hurt his own right to watch porn at the behest of his donors because he accepts donations from internet service providers. So that's why he's coming out and putting his neck on the line to speak out against net neutrality, even if it makes him look like a gigantic hypocrite because he claims to be a supporter of federalism. Well, here he is specifically making an anti-federalism argument in this article here. For what? Well, it's because he's a puppet. His donors in the broadband industry probably told him to write this, and so he, of course, decided to come to the rescue and do that. Well, if Ted Cruz really wants to continue watching porn as frequently as he probably does, then he should be on the side of net neutrality, not against it. But of course, it's Ted Cruz, and he is the most disingenuous, smarmy person in all of politics. So, we shouldn't have ever expected anything but this from him.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.